So last time we were talking about that room full of pictures and how it seemed to really affect Marcus.
Yeah. What was it about those photos that freaked him out so much?
It's not just one photo, it's like hundreds of them, all showing people just terrified faces, contorted in pain.
Ugh, it's awful.
But there's one specific photo that just stops Marcus in his tracks.
What is it?
It's a picture of a young boy, clearly terrified. His face is bruised, tear streaked, and Marcus recognizes him.
Recognizes him. Like
Yeah.
someone he knows.
It's him. It's Marcus as a child.
Whoa. Okay, that's a serious twist.
It's like that moment when the story gets under your skin, you know? It's not just a haunted house anymore, it's personal.
Yeah, it's like their connection to this place is way deeper than they thought.
And as Marcus is processing this, the room itself starts to react.
What do you mean react?
The temperature drops, the air gets thick and heavy, and those whispers we talked about before they come back.
Oh no, those whispers are back.
They're back and they're louder, more urgent. They keep repeating the word remember.
Like they're trying to force them to remember something they've been trying to forget.
Exactly. It's like the facility itself is pushing them towards some buried truth, and it's using their fears and traumas to do it.
Like how?
For Sarah, it triggers a flashback of a dark room, a cold metal table, and voices talking about her like she's an object.
That's so dehumanizing.
It's like the facility is peeling back the layers of their minds, exposing all their vulnerability.
What about Elena? Does she hear something too?
For her, it's the voice of her dead father again, which we know is a major trigger for her.
It's like the facility knows exactly what will hurt them the most.
Yeah, it's a really clever way to connect their pasts to the present horror.
It really blurs the lines between a haunting and a psychological experiment.
Right, like, is this supernatural or just some messed up science?
Or maybe a bit of both.
That's what makes this story so unsettling. You're never quite sure what's real.
So what do? They know they were there as kids, but they still don't know why.
They're desperate to escape the psychological torture, so they keep going deeper into the facility. They get lost, disoriented, their grip on reality starts to slip, and then they hear it, a voice calling out to Sarah.
A voice, like one of the whispers.
It's not just any voice, it's her own voice, calling out to her in the darkness.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
It's like a primal fear, right? Losing yourself the lines between reality blurring.
So how does this story explain that? Like, how is that possible?
It doesn't give a clear answer, but it hints that the facility might be using some kind of technology to manipulate their minds.
Like mind control?
Something like that. It's almost like the story takes a sci-fi turn, blending psychological horror with the idea that our minds can be hacked.
That's a thought that'll keep me up at night.
And just when you think things can't get any weirder, they stumble upon another room.
Another room. What is it this time?
This one is labeled Observation Room, and it changes everything.
How so?
It's like a glimpse behind the curtain. There's this big one-way mirror looking into a dark room, and on a table there's all this old equipment, syringes, files, monitors.
So that's the control center for the experiment.
Exactly. They're not just dealing with a haunted house, they're dealing with the remnants of some truly messed up experiments.
And what about those files? What do they find in them?
Marcus starts reading through them and he finds reports on the experiments. Sleep deprivation, isolation, fear conditioning.
Horrible, but not surprising, I guess.
But here's the truly chilling part. These experiments weren't on adults, they were using children.
Oh my God, that's so much worse.
It's like a punch to the gut, and the story doesn't shy away from the horror of it. And as if to emphasize that the lights go out, plunging the room into darkness.
And I bet the whispers come back.
Of course they do. Louder and more urgent than ever. It's like the facility itself is trying to shut them down to keep its secrets.
But it's too late. They've already seen too much.
And then something truly strange happens. That mirror in the observation room, it starts to shimmer, and it's not reflecting their images anymore.
What is it reflecting?
They see the ghostly faces of terrified children frozen in fear. And among those faces, Sarah recognizes one, her own, as a child.
Wow, so it's confirmed. They were the subjects of these experiments.
It's all starting to come together, but it's a terrifying truth to uncover.
It's like they're not just investigators anymore. They're victims, survivors, forced to face their own trauma.
And it's not just Sarah. Each of them starts to remember fragments of their own experiences, the terror, the pain.
It's like all those whispers, all that manipulation was leading to this moment of revelation.
But there's still a piece missing, right? They know they were there. They know what happened to them. But they still don't know why they were brought back.
Why are their memories resurfacing now?
And as if to answer that question, Marcus finds another file. This one is labeled Memory Suppression Protocol.
What does it say?
It explains how they used drugs and hypnosis to suppress the children's memories, how they could go through those horrors and then have no recollection of it.
It's not just about the experiments, it's about the cover up, making sure the victims never remember.
But it still doesn't explain why they were brought back, does it?
Right.
Well, the file mentions something called a psychological tether.
A psychological tether. What's that?
It's like a trigger implanted in each subject that would eventually draw them back to the facility when they were ready to face their past.
So it wasn't random chance that brought them there. They were being pulled back by something they didn't even understand.
It's a really chilling thought, and it makes you question free will and the ethics of all this research.
So we've got our group standing in this observation room, surrounded by evidence of their trauma, their minds reeling from all these revelations.
They face their past, but what about their future? What happens to them now that they know the truth? So we left off with our group in that observation room, totally overwhelmed by the truth.
Yeah, discovering you were part of those horrific experiments as a kid, I mean, that's got to be life shattering.
It's like their whole reality just imploded, and we were left wondering what happens next, right?
Do they try to expose the people behind it all? Seek revenge?
Well, remember how in the last part the lights went out and that mirror was showing those terrifying images?
And those whispers urging them to remember. Yeah, it was intense.
Well, this time something different happens. The lights come back on the mirror, it goes back to normal, and the whispers just fade away.
Like the facility is done with them?
It's like it achieved its purpose, forcing them to remember, and now it doesn't need to torment them anymore.
That's kind of profound, actually. Like the act of remembering somehow disarmed the horror.
It's like they took back control. They're not just victims anymore, they're survivors.
There's a real shift in the story at this point. It's not that the fear is gone, but there's this sense of resolution starting to build.
They're not just reacting anymore, they're making choices. So what do?
Well, instead of going after the people who did this to them, they focus on healing.
That's interesting. You'd think they'd want revenge.
They do file a report with the authorities, those who specialize in uncovering Cold War experiments.
So they're pursuing justice, but not through violence.
It shows a lot of strength, I think. Choosing to heal instead of being consumed by anger.
And they don't stop there. They seek therapy too. Find specialists who understand trauma and memory suppression.
It's a reminder that healing from something like this takes time and courage and often professional help.
What about the Braxton facility itself? What happens to it?
A year later, Sarah goes back to Braxton. The facility has been condemned and is scheduled for demolition.
Wow, so they're literally tearing down the place where it all happened.
And as Sarah watches those bulldozers, she feels a sense of peace. The echoes of her past are still there, but they've faded. They don't control her anymore.
It's a bittersweet ending, but it offers hope. They went through hell, uncovered this horrific truth, but they found the strength to heal and move on.
Echoes in the dark. It's fictional, but it reminds us that the scariest monsters aren't always supernatural.
Sometimes they're the secrets we bury within ourselves.
And facing those secrets, no matter how painful, can be the key to overcoming them.
This story really makes you think about the power of our own minds, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Like what echoes from our own past might be influencing us today without us even realizing it.
It's a question worth pondering, even if the answers are unsettling. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into echoes in the dark. Remember, the truth, no matter how frightening, can ultimately set you free.